Good afternoon, and welcome to the Legal Connection with Toni and Cheryl. Toni and I are going to be talking about immigration law. It's our third part in the immigration law series. But I just want to tell our listeners that Toni Lynn Collins and Cheryl Ellsworth Jahani are two Texas licensed attorneys. We practice law all over the state of Texas, really, but mostly here in Harrison, Montgomery County. But, gosh, Toni, I've done things in Travis County and
Pretty
Tarrant
much
County.
all over.
Yeah, all over. And we're here for you. The reason that we do this, the Legal Connection radio show, is because we know that at some point in everyone's life, they face some sort of legal issue, even if it's the end of their lives when they're creating a will, if they decide to do that. But it can be overwhelming and confusing. And so we want to help you and answer your questions. The last two shows, we had the immigration law attorney Shiva Gill as our guest. And hopefully she'll come back on and answer some more questions for our listeners. But Toni and I want to take it. She wasn't available this week, so we want to kind of take it where she left off.
Yeah, we're going to recap some of the issues that she brought up and having to do with immigration. It's a big deal right now with people coming over in droves over the border. And, just last night, President Trump was in El Paso.
Right.
He gave his big speech, and, there was a lot of heckling and stuff. I need to find out what all that was
Right.
going on.
I
That was really
reading,
interesting.
yeah, I was reading about that too.
But what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about really the ways that if you come to America to come here legally, because these people are coming over illegally. That's the big problem. There's people waiting in line, people that want to be citizens, moving forward with what their options are, but doing it the right way. And, going through, we're going to give you a website that you can actually go to if you want to follow some of the things we're going to talk about. And that's it's www.uscis.gov, which is how you apply to be a citizen. And we'll also post that on our website. But when I was going over this, and there's so many people that have come here, throughout the few centuries that we've been a country,
Right.
and even before, but of course, after we became a country, they had the laws giving you the steps to become a citizen. That it was a little bit different. Well, they've got it fine tuned now. Where there's a ton of steps, and I understand now why a lot of people are coming over illegally. It's a lot of work.
No
You've
kidding.
got to fill out applications and determine if you're eligible. And
A lengthy process too.
it's lengthy, it's time consuming, but if you do it the right way, then you don't have to worry about looking over your shoulder all the time.
Right.
The problem is people are coming over they say an asylum, but we know most of the time it's economic. In fact, I would say probably 90% of the time it's because we're the land of plenty and people want work.
Right.
But there's ways to get here legally doing that too.
Right.
Not just coming over the border. And then, as it stands right now, we've got these detention centers here in our area.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the Montgomery County Processing Center, which
Right.
is where detainees are kept until they're processed out. But those are the people that have been actually picked up and they're being detained.
Because they're here illegally.
Right, but there's a lot of people that come over the border and they're literally released into Texas. They're kind of checked. They're at the border from what I can understand is happening. They're at the border, either they're coming through the checkpoints, not legally, but at least they're being processed through. Or they're coming through the areas that don't have the wall, or they're just being, like Trump was saying, they're coming in through the coyotes and just they're being dispersed into the United States and until they're picked up and found, which they may eventually be, because they can't get a job without a social security number. At some point, it's a bad place to be. So it's much better to come here legally. It's a bad place to be from the people that I know and we know, and I would be, I guess, hiding behind a firewall if we didn't say this is the truth. We all know people that are here illegally.
Mm-hmm.
We all know people that are here that
Mm-hmm.
do not have citizenship and are trying to be here.
Right.
And for the most part, they're very nice people and they just want to work. But some of them aren't so nice, and they're
Right.
breaking laws, and they're assaulting women, and
Mm-hmm.
they have an attitude like
Mm-hmm.
they're entitled to be here.
Right.
Those are the people that are shining a bad light on people that just want to work. But that all being said, people should be here legally. They need to be accounted for. They need to pay their taxes. And we're going to talk about today on how you either come here to be legally and you do it the right way, or if you're already here, what you need to do to become legal, not be hiding under, some rock somewhere. And what I was going to say is that the people that do come here and go back and forth from Mexico and Honduras
Mm-hmm.
and the various places they come from, mostly Mexico. I know there's lots and lots of people from the countries that are south of Mexico, but they're eventually having to come up through
Through
Mexico.
Mexico.
I don't know many people that have came over here on a plane. A lot of them did, or
Mm-hmm.
airline or whatever. A lot of them
Mm-hmm.
did because they came over with their families and they overstayed their visas. But the people that I know that are here, that are at the work, what do you call I forgot what they call it. It's where the people are. They. What is the place I'm talking about? It's right over here off of 75. It's the work camp.
Oh,
And they're
yeah.
not here legally, but they're
Right.
not picked up. And there's some agreement they have with either Catholic Charities or just the city where they're not taken into ICE because they're just hardworking people and they have a lot of number and people come pick them up to do their lawn work and stuff. And it's almost like a sanctuary situation, but it's not.
Hmm.
And but they know they're safe there if they go there to get work.
Okay.
But the people that go back and forth to Mexico to visit with their families, they pay a lot of money to the Coyotes, and they can't get around it. Everybody I've talked to, there's no getting around this. Every single person I've represented that's here illegally, has had to pay between $7,000 and $15,000 to have a coyote get them across because the drug runners and the cartels are there at the border. And wouldn't it be better if the United States could get that money instead? If you're going to pay $10,000 to $15,000 to be here every time you cross the border. Wouldn't it be better to give it to the government?
Uh-huh. And when you say, okay, two things I want our listeners, I want to get your input on this. Two things you said that stuck out to me. A lot of illegal immigrants say, I pay taxes. I pay taxes.
Mhm.
Now, they're talking about I pay sales taxes on the
Mhm.
items I buy.
No, a lot of them are paying income taxes.
So they fill out the income tax
Mhm.
form and submit
I don't
the
know
check
what
or
number.
whatever.
I don't know if they're getting illegal numbers. I know some people have actually gotten, as we've discussed before, a social. They bought a social,
A
and they're a
fake.
real person. They've got
Mhm.
a real name, but it's phony. If they were ever to be
Mhm.
fingerprinted,
Mhm.
it wouldn't match. It's just something they bought. These
And a
people,
driver's license.
they
They
are
can get driver's
very
license.
creative. The
Yeah.
people that do this sort of uh, back, this fraudulent
Mhm.
identity
Mhm.
scheme.
Mhm.
They're very, very good, and it's very, very expensive. But if you're here and you're working and you want it bad enough, they do it,
Yeah.
and they have to be on the straight and narrow because if they're picked up for any reason, their
Mhm.
fingerprints are going to show there's somebody other than what's that shows who they are. But they actually do. People that aren't even here legally, they get an EIN. They'll set up a company and they get an EIN number, and so they pay taxes through the company they've set up through the Secretary of State.
Okay.
And it seems pretty legitimate. The problem is they're not here legally.
Right.
Eventually, it's going to catch up with them.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. So we're talking about the legal path to citizenship and why it's so important. But one other thing you said about coming through with the coyotes. Now, those are people that transport people, illegal people, across the border and
Yes.
get them here safely,
Yes.
and they pay them $7,000 to $15,000 per
I've never
head.
seen it lower than 7, and
Mhm.
I've never heard of it higher than 15. And I talk to so many clients that are here illegally.
Okay, well, so having said that, and you'd said something about, there are the drug runners and all of that that are
Mhm.
at the border. So, say a person from Mexico, I don't know what their original destination, origin of, the
Country of
departure,
origin, right?
country of origin is, but they're coming in through Mexico and they didn't pay a coyote
Mhm.
and they're facing drug runners. So,
I don't know anybody. I mean, we're talking burly guys, big guys that come up here and work and do work for. And these same people have wanted to be citizens desperately because they've been here a long time. They speak really good English, but they're not citizens. And
right.
they're in their 20s and they're like hosses. I mean, they're
Mhm,
big. So
mhm,
the workers, the employers want them here. The
mhm.
employers actually will do anything they can to get them a work visa. The problem is if they crossed over illegally and there's a footprint, they can't. They have to go back to Mexico or wherever for 10 years.
Yeah,
and then
I've
come
been
in.
through that process of
Mhm.
applying for someone to come in a work visa. The problem is that's all tied up too because each state only gives X amount of work visas per
Right,
year,
right,
and they only issue them from this is all from memory, but I think 2 times a year.
right.
And all the workers, all the people that bring in workers in the landscaping and the in the farming business, all of that. They've taken all those slots that are available for
Right.
those work
Well,
visas.
I was going to let our listeners know this. There is a list of visas, non-immigrant and temporary visas, and you can find that at www.silsimmigration.com. And I don't even know if this is a lawyer website or whatever. It's just a website I found because we don't do primarily immigration. But it lists visas from A to Z, literally. And there are so many visas. There's an A1, just for an example, I won't go through all of them, but an A1 visa is for foreign government officials. An A2 visa, foreign government officials, and it goes for employees and their family. A B1 visa is a temporary visa for business travelers and domestic servants. The B2 visa is for visitors. You can get a student visa. You can get a U visa. If you go to this list, there's a ton of visas that you can apply for. The problem with these visas is it may lead to citizenship, but they're only visas. You're here legally, but only for a temporary period of time.
And don't you have to get those visas before you enter the
Yes,
country?
you can't enter the country and then get a visa. Well, unless you go through the next thing we're going to talk about,
Okay,
which
but
is
before we go on to that, I would just want to wrap this up before they get in the country
Mhm.
and they're coming illegally,
Right.
right? So you got the coyotes.
Well, I mean, it's just like if you visit Italy, like when we had to get a Brazil, we had to get a visa when we
Yeah.
went to Brazil a couple
Mhm,
of years
mhm.
ago, and we were just visiting. Then you
Right.
get there's student visas. Tons of people get student visas. They
Oh,
stay
yeah.
over,
Oh, yeah. And they extend their stay.
but they do it before they come to the country.
Right. But I want to just go back to the drug runners that these
Okay.
guys are facing, right?
Mhm.
So if they don't have a coyote to take them across that they
Mhm.
pay X amount of dollars to,
Mhm.
pretty high, then they're facing the drug runners, which means these drug runners.
Well, the coyotes and the drug runners, I don't and I've asked this to a lot of the people that I've talked with. I wish I could have them here, but I think they'd probably be afraid to come forward and
Oh,
say.
yeah.
But the drug runners and the coyotes are kind of the same. They're related. They're part of the cartel. And I would never have believed this. I would have thought, no, that's just baloney. Just walk over. Just go over the Rio Grande. Get in your little inner tube, like they say, and come across. They've got it's such a system down there that you'll get within a few miles of the border and you can't get through. They'll find you. It's like they're looking for you. You're not going
And
past
kidnap you and
unless
get
you pay
you
this.
to
You're not
run.
going to come over on a truck. You see these big things that they say fish and they've really got people in them. You're not coming over. In other words, they can't get through. They're going to find you. And if they find out you got through without paying this ransom, is basically what it is, then you're going to be hurt. And this has been a common thread through all of them. Now, it seems to me that these people that are coming over by the thousands, that's safety in numbers. They're not going to get hurt when they're coming over in thousands. So that makes sense. It may be cheaper for them to come over like that. But I
Right.
also understand that they're also being sponsored by, these left-wing political organizations so that they can, be able to vote and whatever.
You know, what a
And
shock.
even that to me sounds like such a conspiracy theory. But, after you look at the people that've gone and interviewed them, I guess there's some truth to it.
Right. But what I want to get to is the drug runner,
Okay.
right? So what happens, I heard a case just the other day from a friend of mine who practices immigration law.
Okay.
There were a dad and a son that were coming from I believe it was Honduras,
Mhm.
and they didn't have money to pay for someone to bring them across the border,
Mhm.
this ransom. They were kidnapped. This is their story,
Mhm.
okay? They were kidnapped by drug runners,
Mhm.
taken to Arizona,
Mhm.
held hostage in a house, given a backpack and some water and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
and told to run across the Arizona desert and meet so and so. Now that's their story.
Uh-huh.
But it was because, and you alluded to it at the beginning. We're going to take a break here in a second, but it was because they didn't pay
Right.
these illegal
Oh,
guys to bring them across the border. So they entered another way. So the whole premise is you run these drugs for me,
Uh-huh.
and once
Yeah,
you get
yeah,
there,
yeah.
then you're on your own.
And I
But
will
right
add one more
now,
thing before we take a break. I had another lady that I represented, and I represented her because her husband was arrested from working at some Mexican restaurant over off 249, and he had a false name, and he admitted to it. Which all people that aren't here legally, that want to be here legally, do not give a false name. The worst thing you can do is lie to the police here
yeah,
because it's gonna end your ability to get in legally if you do that. That lie is the big thing. So they came in, and it ends up they were being held hostage. The whole family and the husband got to leave and go work, but the women were all being held hostage in this house in Houston. And ultimately, she did become a citizen because of the U visa, because she was being held hostage and they were able to unfold it. But
Right.
she was kept in this house with the windows were foiled up over here in Houston. And it wasn't a nice area, but it wasn't a bad area. And she was going to be made to be a prostitute. And she said she wouldn't do it. So they wouldn't let her out of the house. You're either going to do what we say that you're going to do. You're going to run drugs. You're going to be a prostitute. You're going to work for us
Yeah.
and say nothing or you're in trouble. And this is the only place you're going to stay because we're going to turn you in. The citizens that
Yeah.
actually got citizen, we will turn you in that you're illegal if you don't do what we say. So it's all really, really bad. So it's better to come in legally, which we're going to talk about next.
Right. And that seems like the only safe place for any of these people. Okay, guys, you can message us your questions on Facebook. We'll be right back after the break.
Hispanic Chamber Connections with Dr. Carlos Sanchez, President of the Woodlands Conroe Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, featuring event announcements, member highlights, and more. Tuesdays at 1 p.m., broadcasting from the heart of Conroe, Texas on irlonestar.com and Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1.
Did you know that there are over 153 million orphans in the world today? The sad reality is 99% of those kids will likely never be adopted. Core Love is an organization right here in Conroe that takes care of orphan children in Haiti, Honduras, and India. We bring the love of Jesus by providing their 6 basic needs of clean water, proper food, healthcare, education, job skills, and a loving home. Visit corelove.org, that's CORELUV.org. Will you help defend the orphan?
What can the Better Living for Texans program do for you? You can learn how to increase your consumption of fruits and vegetables, choose foods that are relatively inexpensive and good to eat, make your food dollars last longer, prepare quick, nutritious meals, help your children learn how to eat healthier snacks, and much more. Our program is committed to helping people like you improve your health through providing research-based nutrition education in a friendly, cost-free, and relaxed environment. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
A Lone Star Community Radio is ready for the summer. If you or anyone you know is looking for summer internship opportunities, a Lone Star Community Radio is a great place to grab the mic and be on the air. A Lone Star Community Radio offers a great opportunity to those interested in learning about the radio world all year round. Be an on-air personality, talk show producer, or YouTube, TV, podcast editor. Contact the station at info@irlonestar.com or call the station's message line at 936-647-3776.
Welcome to the Legal Connection with Toni and Cheryl. Welcome back. Toni and I are talking about immigration law today, and this is part 3. You guys can download us, and we want you to know you can download us on Google Play or iTunes. Tomorrow you can listen live on Facebook, and you can reach out to us at questions@legalconnectionshow.com, or you can message us on Facebook with your questions. Toni's really good about getting back to those questions. I like to read her answers. So now we're going to talk about applying for citizenship and how to come through the country legally. And I just want to sort of reiterate what we hit on right at the very end of the last segment, is that the legal pathway to citizenship is a protection for everyone. You're not having to pay coyotes $15,000. You're not having to be vulnerable to human trafficking and kidnapping and made to run drugs and stuff like that. It just takes time.
I don't know what right now. I guess we haven't gotten. It hasn't kind of made its way up to the Conroe area yet. But the people that are coming over in these caravans, I don't know if they're paying coyotes or not. It seems like they may be because they're part of a group,
Right.
but it may not be the same as an individual. You get you get the group discount is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, that would make sense to me that you would. Okay. So step 1 in applying for citizenship is you got to determine if you're already a citizen. If you're not a citizen by U.S. birth, or you do not acquire or derive U.S. citizenship from your parents automatically after birth, then the next thing you do is you determine if you're eligible to become a U.S. citizen. There's a website called Naturalization Eligibility Worksheet, PDF. If you go to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, um, you can download that and take a look at it to determine if you're eligible. Then you prepare a form. You start filling out some
You know,
applications.
that eligibility, I looked at it. It's a long, it's sort of like, it says if you, I didn't print it out, but it's basically you are eligible if, and then it goes to this list and it says, if no, then go to this page. If no, go to
Right.
this page. And to apply, you have to be like over 18 years old. And, there's a whole series of things you have to look at. And I'm not going to go into all those right now. There's so many different ways. But if you go there, that's what it is. And when I looked at the checklist, it's kind of difficult. I can see where somebody would be sort of downtrodden if they went to this to see if they could become a citizen. And I think the time frames are like you have to be here 3 years if you marry a citizen, 5 years if you don't. But you've got to go through this whole list and fill out all these forms. And it's to be in the military was another way to be here more quickly. But married a citizen, being in the military, or having the background, the professional background, the education, these are the kind of things that make
Where
it a
you're
lot.
sponsored by your employer.
You're sponsored by your employer, but you've got to have something to offer. And so I can see where somebody from a third world country that just wanted to, know somebody that's up here would want to, ditch the normal,
Legal
the
path.
proper process
Mhm.
and just skip the line and go in. So
Mhm.
if you look at that just for fun, just anybody that's actually a citizen, see what these people have to go through and why they're cheating. It's basically they're cheating.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's really a mess. I mean, like when I tried to apply for a work visa for someone who wanted to work for me in my home, I realized that this was ridiculous. I mean, the state of Colorado granted, 4,000 of these a year, and every year the people that were bringing people in to work in their farms
Mhm.
would pre-apply the year before,
Oh.
and so no one could get in. It was like a joke.
So did you get a nanny?
No,
Oh, you
no,
didn't.
and it was a wonderful
And you were
woman.
willing to pay.
Oh yeah,
Big
and
time.
the legal pathway.
And how
But
many kids did you have?
I have 6.
You're not. I can't believe you're not Catholic. Okay.
I'm not Catholic, and I'm not Mormon. I am Protestant. Believe it or
One
not.
day I'm going to convert you to Catholicism.
You
It's going to
wish.
happen.
You wish. Okay, so the next thing you do is you get your Form N-400, you fill it out, you schedule an interview, you go into the interview, you receive the decision,
Mhm.
and you receive notice to go take the oath. You've got to go in. You see those people
And
taking
you're
the oath.
streamlining this to also go take the oath. I mean, you have to. I know one thing that I read is you have to speak English. You have to understand, be able to
Right.
write and read and understand English. And they're not really. That's not something that's well known because they're making it so that you can fill out all these things in all these different languages when you go get your driver's license and stuff. But the truth of the matter is, there's only a few exceptions, like you're over 55, and when you apply to be a citizen, you've already got somebody that lives here. But anyway, that was just something that I looked at. It's hard. If you're not established in your country and you're just coming over here because you have you're economically in need for a
Mhm,
job and
mhm.
this is the good life, it's not an easy thing to do to become a citizen, short of being in the military or marrying a citizen or seeking asylum, which you cannot, we learned from our other show, seek asylum unless you're from a country, a government that will allow you to seek asylum. And what you were talking about earlier was, with me when we were on the phone, about a girl that that came over with you said she was here temporarily.
Temporary protected
Tell us about
status.
that.
Well, back, I believe it was in the 90s, late 90s, El Salvador had, I believe it was 2 earthquakes, very significant earthquakes. And and they occurred like, I think 2.5 years apart.
Mhm.
I mean, this is not absolutely correct, but it's close enough. The first earthquake completely destroyed their home. I mean, the way she tells the story, she said it was like in the movies when, as she was running down the stairs, her and her nanny were running down the stairs
Uh-huh.
because the house started shaking,
Wow.
and you could hear all the crashing glass
And how old was she
behind
when this
her.
was happening?
I think she was 9.
Uh-huh.
hmm
Scary.
And then the next so utterly destroyed their home, but
Mhm.
it never entered their mind to leave, her and her family.
But they were okay. I mean, they were economically okay in El
They
Salvador.
were
Okay.
okay, yeah, and had a thriving business and all that. Well, the second earthquake destroyed their business.
Mhm.
The first earthquake hit one part of the country. The second earthquake hit another region.
Mhm.
The second earthquake destroyed their business, and so they applied for temporary protected status. They
Mhm.
came over here as a result of the earthquake. They had no place to live, no business. Now,
And what year
everything
was that? Have you
destroyed.
any idea?
She was 12, so,
90s?
16, 18 years ago. Yeah, 1999 maybe.
Okay.
Um,
They speak English?
yeah, they spoke some English.
Oh, really? Okay.
hmm Well, English is taught as a foreign language in so many countries.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
many. Um,
I didn't know in El Salvador they taught English.
they
I
teach
knew
it
they
in
do in China.
Vietnam,
and-
and yeah, they
Mhm.
teach it in Iran. My husband learned English as a second language, and when he
Huh.
came over here, he spoke it perfectly.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, so when they came over here, it was temporary protected status,
Mhm.
and people don't understand. We don't understand. We're Americans. We're grateful. We're naive.
Yes.
Okay, we don't understand this conversation that's going on between Trump and the Democrats, and how Trump. So the temporary protected status is great, but they don't have any status.
Mhm.
All they have is protected status.
Right.
They're not applying for green cards. They're not applying for anything.
Why aren't they applying for green cards?
Well, because they're here.
Because I understand that's the only way that you can become a citizen. is with a green card.
Tony, the only answer that I have for that is I believe that if they're here under one status, they can't change that status.
Oh, okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense. We'll have to ask Shiva. Mhm.
Yeah, she'll know. But anyway, the only thing that they can do is reapply for temporary protected status.
Mhm.
And I think that it's every 18 months.
Uh-huh.
I think Trump did something that limited that time to every 6 months. So
Which
here
makes
these
sense.
people are fine. Yeah. Well, so now they've been here for 20 years,
Uh-huh.
established a life, and
So they've had protective status for 20 years.
because it was the only option that was afforded them.
So then my question is, since they no longer need protection, since El Salvador is no longer in an earthquake mode, why don't they go back to El Salvador?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have that same question. I know I always
I mean, you
have,
said that they had a business and a house, and that was their home, and that's where they're.
and it's all gone. It was all destroyed. So they came over here
Uh-huh.
under the temporary
And they've
protected
made money
status.
here,
They have a home.
Mhm.
They brought a lot of family members with them.
but they still have land over in El Salvador. I mean,
I don't know whether they do or
okay.
not.
This is a hypothetical.
Right, sure. And everybody thinks that.
Mhm.
I do too. But I can't answer that question.
Right.
But they brought all their family members over
Mhm.
here. They started a business, and it's very successful. As a matter of fact, they have two.
And they're here under protective status.
They're
And the
here.
family members are here on a
They're
protective status?
well. It's interesting because they're here under the parents are here under temporary protected status.
Uh-huh.
They brought her mom, the mom's mom, and the mom's sisters, and
Uh-huh.
all that, and
Uh-huh.
then the cousins are all here. And I guess they came under temporary protected
Uh-huh.
status too when the earthquake occurred in the other country. The children, one went to law school, one has a PhD, and one is a physician.
And they're not citizens.
One of them is a citizen because he applied through his wife.
Okay.
The second son is applying through his wife and is
Okay.
on the path to
So
citizenship
they're all through marriage.
through marriage. Those two are.
Okay.
And then the other child, hasn't applied through
So
anyone.
if they're-
So she's still under temporary protected status. And I just want to say this:
Mhm.
they're freaked out. Trump being elected was as far as they're concerned, that was the absolute worst thing that could have ever happened to them.
Can they vote with temporary status?
No, they can't do
Oh.
anything.
Well, then I have to ask, if you've got a lawyer, that's a lawyer, PhD, I don't know which is which, it's here and married and all that. They are contributing. So why don't they apply through? I mean, I know that we'd have to ask Shiva that, but it seems to me that this would be the type of person that could apply through a work visa, so it wouldn't be freaking out because they were so well established and they've done well,
Mhm.
and they've got good moral character, and
have
they
to
meet
have-
the criteria.
If you can convert one status to another status, I mean, Shiva would have to answer that for us. But see, the problem that I have is this person that I know is an attorney,
Uh-huh.
and she's an immigration
Uh-huh.
specialist. And so if there were any options for her, she would know what they are.
Right.
And what she's told me is that she has absolutely no options.
Mhm.
And because she's under this status,
Uh-huh.
I mean, the only option for her is to find some person and marry them. And she wants to marry for love. So she's waiting to find someone that she can
And
fall
we
in
were
love with.
discussing this earlier too, where everyone comes over and knows that marriage is the golden goose.
Mm-hmm.
That is the way. That is the primary way of becoming a citizen. In fact, when I was talking to another immigration attorney last week, I had a client who we went through the removal proceedings. He was here illegally. He was picked up by ICE. He got in a fight with his legal citizen wife, who he divorced, and they have a child, but she's a drug addict, and so he had to. He's trying to get out of ICE and establish a residency or a legal reason to be here, so he doesn't get deported, because to take care of his 9-year-old son. and he can't because he's now pled guilty to an assault to get out of jail so he could take care of his son. It was like
Oh,
it was
yeah.
cyclical. He didn't really do anything wrong. There was
He
a
just wanted to get
fraudulent
out.
there was a fraudulent
Accusation.
accusation made to the police, and because his wife was a drug addict, and she wanted to make sure that she didn't have to pay, that she wouldn't lose custody of her kid, which she already did, but she owed child support, and he had custody. So she's like, I know, short of killing him, I'll get him sent back to Mexico. So he was in jail forever. He couldn't get out of ICE, and finally he just pled. But if you plead, even if it's not deferred, you're stuck. All right. We explained all of this to the judge. I was actually a witness for him.
Oh, wow.
It went on for about an hour, and nicest guy ever. He got his GED, didn't graduate from high school because he wanted to get out early. Not that he couldn't graduate. He was here since he was a baby. He came over here legally. And the judge
How
said,
does the baby come over here legally?
well, because he's brought up by his parents.
Okay.
His parents came over, and he was
And they were
21.
legal. Okay.
And they were
good.
illegal, but and he was illegal at 1. They all came over illegally, so he was illegal. But he's been here since he was 1. He's a
Okay.
dreamer. Okay.
Right.
So the assaults and DWIs though are going to make it so you can't stay because now you no longer have moral character.
right.
Because just like you said, protective status to some degree, if you want to look at it like that. The judge said, we discussed this last week. The judge said, "I'm sorry that your son has no one to take care of him. CPS will take care of it. I'm sorry that your wife is a drug addict, but you didn't have to plead guilty, and I know you're in jail for months and months. But there's nothing I can do, and you're going to be deported." So I was like, what is this guy going to do? Shiva said that, don't worry. If he can find someone to marry, that's the only way, but I can get him back. I can get him back here legally if he can find someone to marry that's a citizen. So marriage seems to be the golden goose. And we were talking about how it's really sad that these illegal aliens or people with protected status will wine and dine your children
Yeah. No kidding.
to be a citizen, to marry
Mhm,
them. So
mhm,
beware. We're going to
mhm.
talk about that, I think, in our next segment.
No, we're gonna talk about that right now.
Good.
A little bit. A little
Yeah.
bit.
All right. So I want to, now that we've talked to some degree, I think we gave the website. If somebody is here on a visa, we talked about the website that has all the visas. You come over here legally through, you visited an overstayed and didn't renew your visa. You got a work visa, but didn't, for whatever reason you didn't renew it. You're no longer here legally, but you came legally. That's a really good place to be.
And that's what Shiva was telling
Right.
us. It all depends on how you got here. Did you illegally enter
Mhm.
or did you legally enter?
And if you got here illegally, but there's no footprint, meaning you just don't, there's no one can see that you're here illegally. That's another, at least you're good. There's a way that you can get a work visa but you've got to go back to the country of your origin to get the visa to come back legally. You have to be here legally. There's
Yeah.
not way, you can't just say you're here. You have to be
Right.
here coming through a port of entry
Mhm,
properly. All right.
mhm.
So that being said, going through all of the wheels to become a citizen and all that stuff. Let's say you got here legally, and now you want to become a citizen,
Mhm.
and you've got a story for us, and I want to talk about that.
Well, my husband, it was born in Tehran in Iran. And I met him. He came to this country legally when he was 14 years old.
And when he came over legally, was it visiting or as a student, or
He was a student.
was it during the Iran crisis?
It was right before that.
Because I know 79 was when we had the hostages.
And it was right before that. It was a
and
couple
all
of years
Iranians
before.
during that period called themselves Persians. I know that.
Well, because they were hiding their country of origin because people would beat the crud out of them
Mhm.
in bars and on streets and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But basically what happened is like anything, you and I were talking about your people coming over in 1850.
Mhm.
Something goes on in the country of origin.
Right.
There's a war, there's
Famine.
starvation.
And I was doing
Right.
Ancestry.com this weekend, and I was
Mhm.
looking at my roots, so to
Mhm.
speak. And my ancestors came over in the 1850s and 1860s. Not all, I had some that actually came all the way from 1620. I mean, we're going all the way back to Mayflower
sure.
time.
But it
because
was a
they married into
tragedy
it.
going on in their
But the
originating
people that
country.
came in 1620, they were having religious persecution. right?
Exactly.
And my family was from the Swiss Alps and
Mhm.
from
Italy.
Italy by the Genova, by another port city.
Mhm.
So a lot of people that were sailors, I guess. And then a trade. They were doing trade. They were doing olive trading, just like in
Mhm.
the Godfather. They
Yeah.
were doing the trading, but they were well off. These people had enough
Yeah.
money to get on a ship
Oh,
and
sure.
come over.
It's expensive.
And then we had the people that were from France, and then we had the people from Germany that were near the Netherlands. So
Mhm.
all these people, during that time frame, there were revolutions going on, and they
Mhm.
needed to get out
Mhm.
to be safe. Many of my relatives still live in Italy and France
Sure.
and in Germany and in the Netherlands and Switzerland. I mean, I can see them.
Right, but
But
so what happened with my husband was they wanted to come over here so their kids could have a better
Mhm.
education because education wasn't available over there
Mhm.
to everyone. The top 2% get education in Iran at that time, a good one, and it's very expensive, so they came over here. And also the family wanted to come because they felt like they would do better economically.
Mhm.
So then right after that, the Iranian situation, the country fell apart,
Right, I remember
imploded,
that.
right,
Uh-huh.
and we all
We were
do
on good terms with them, if I remember
under
anything
the
about
Shah.
my Middle Eastern history, and then it all fell apart. And I
Once
shouldn't.
Khomeini took over.
Khomeini took over, and
Mhm.
then all thing went crazy, and then all of a sudden America was hated by all. But the people that came over were, for the most part, they weren't Muslim; they were Christians, and they were being persecuted. I remember that. I have a lot of clients that were quote Persian that came over that are all. I think they're Catholics, actually.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so anyway, they come over under that. Well, that wasn't my husband's family, but they came over here. And so they're like, as we were talking about, three paths to citizenship. My
Mhm.
husband Sam actually applied for citizenship before we got married.
Mhm.
It's funny because the day before we got married, he had to leave the country, go to Canada, and
Mhm.
fly back into the country. So he was on a path to citizenship by himself. He
Uh-huh.
could have applied through me, but he didn't need to because he was further along that path than if he stopped and then applied through me.
Right. Now, to go back with your story, 'cause I was so interested in it. You said that Sam came over when he was 14
Right.
and that he went to school here in Dallas.
In Dallas.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And he spoke English already.
Yeah.
And that he graduated from college.
When
And
he
I
was
guess it was a
young.
community college in Dallas.
No, North Texas State University.
Okay. And
He graduated from high school when he was, sorry, Sam, I'm telling all these people your story.
but I love the stories. He's
Yeah, it's a
doctor.
great
Mhm.
story. He graduated from high school when he was 16, 17.
So he graduated early, so he was really smart.
Started going to community college. He went to Richland Community College. Then he transferred to North Texas State University.
Mhm.
Graduated from there, and from there went to medical
So he's
school.
kind of a Doogie Howser because he graduated from college when he was 19,
He graduated from college when he was 20.
20.
Mhm.
Okay. And y'all met. I love the
Started
story of
medical school
how you
when he
met.
was 20.
How did y'all meet?
We worked at a hospital. I was a runner. I just took things, from
So
floor
you're
to
like a
floor.
candy striper.
It was before they had tube systems or anything like that. You'd have to go pick something up, take it to the lab, whatever.
Uh-huh.
And Sam was an orderly,
Uh-huh.
trying to get some work experience in a hospital to put on his medical school application.
Okay.
So,
At 20.
yeah, and I just think it's interesting that a lot of these people realize the opportunity that they have and they're not going to
Mhm.
waste it, and they become physicians or they become
So he was still here on a visa then? Or how was he here if he wasn't here legally after he graduated from college at 20?
he was on a path to citizenship.
Uh-huh.
His applications had been submitted. They had an attorney. I remember,
Okay.
I think the guy
'Cause he
was
was here since he's 14. That makes sense.
right.
Uh-huh.
And so, they were just applying and doing all the stuff.
Mhm.
He came when he was 14, and I believe it was 3 years later, Iran fell apart. So
Mhm.
then everybody started hating Iranians, and that's
Uh-huh.
when they all started
Oh.
saying, "Oh, I'm not Iranian, I'm Persian."
Okay.
And then
right.
all of us dumb Americans would go, "Oh, they're Persian, that's okay."
Carpets,
And then
that's
they'd laugh
fun.
at us because
Uh-huh.
we're stupid. But they were doing it to protect themselves, you know?
Maybe they did.
Yeah. Well, my dad is the one who told me Sam was Iranian. All Sam told me was he was Persian. My
Uh-huh.
dad said, Where's he from? And I
Uh-huh.
said, "Oh, he's from Persia."
Yeah, really.
And Dad said, "Hey, honey, that's Iran." And I was like, "No, it is no way, no
I
way."
know, and you see that, and I'm just a little sidebar. We watched Dr. Zhivago the other night. We're watching the
Oh, I
top
love
100
that.
classic movies, and I love Dr. Zhivago. And it's the same thing. When I saw Omar Sharif, I was like, "Is he Iranian?" Well, he's actually Egyptian.
Yeah, I know.
But I remember thinking, I wonder if he got a backlash from going to Hollywood and being from Iran, but not back then.
No,
You know,
no.
back in the day. But he was so handsome,
He
and so many
was,
people
wasn't
from
he?
that area are really handsome.
Yeah.
A lot of them are the devil right now, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of them aren't handsome. It's just like Americans. Some of
Uh-huh.
us are gorgeous and some of us are puny looking. But anyway, having said that, I do know another Iranian who had a sham marriage.
Mhm.
And of course, no respect for this person from me,
Uh-huh.
but paid a woman back, I think in the 80s, $2,500. I found out about this when I was like 19.
Mhm.
$2,500 to marry him.
Mhm.
And
Did she know that she was?
oh yeah. Yeah.
She understood
wanted
it
the
was a
money.
sham marriage.
Oh, she wanted the money.
Really?
Oh, yeah. She got
She says this is
$2,500.
bad then.
Yeah. And then I also know another individual who is very near and dear to my heart who married someone from Iran who was
Mhm.
also a physician. And he applied for citizenship through her
Mhm.
once they got married, never even told her he did it.
Oh.
So, some shady stuff
That's
going
not a very
on.
good marriage when you're
But
not being trustworthy and honest about it.
well, it appears that you're just using that person.
Yeah,
And
that's using.
yeah,
Mhm.
but so that's an example, personal example of three different paths to citizenship. You can lie and have a sham marriage. You can begin the path on your own and complete it on your own. It doesn't have anything to do with your
Right.
marriage. Or you can apply through the person that you're married to.
And I know that we probably have to go to a break soon, but I'll say this. Before I met my beloved husband, I had dated somebody who was very well off, and he sounded like Hitler. And I called him Hitler kind of behind his back because I'd laugh about it because he just sounded like came straight from the Sound of Music. But really handsome guy, really rich. And I asked him, I'm like, how are you here? Because he spoke like 6 languages. And he was way too rich and to do for me. I mean, he liked the opera, and I really would rather be skating or playing tennis than sit at an opera. But he said he came through. He actually went to a really expensive private school in Mexico City. He grew up in Mexico City, but he spoke like he was from Germany. He goes, no, it was a French school in Mexico City, and we applied for citizenship, and now he owns all these car dealerships. He's really rich. But that was the right way to do it. He said, of course, I came through the right way. I applied
Right.
for citizenship, and then I came through once I was approved, and the right. So there's ways to do it the right way too. But he came from an upbringing that allowed him to do it the right way and not have any sweat about it.
Exactly, Tony. I mean, these people, we're going to take a break, but these people do this because they don't have the money. But you know what I think? And I know you do too. And a lot of our listeners, if you have $7,000 to $15,000 to pay a coyote, then calm down and do it legally and pay it the right way.
Right. Just stay put where you're at for a while and do it the right way.
Right. We're going to take a break. Toni and Cheryl, we're talking about immigration law, and we'll be right back after the break.
We have the safest food supply in the world. Strict laws and regulations restrict the usage of hormones, antibiotics, and pesticides within our food supply. Production agriculture practices and technologies such as the use of GMOs, which is not any more or less risky than conventional crop production, has allowed American farmers to produce more food on less acres in environmentally sound ways. Find out more online at pathtotheplate.tamu.edu. We are Texas A&M Agri-Life Extension, helping Texans make lives better.
The Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service has been dedicated to educating Texans for over a century. In 1915, the Extension Program was established under the federal Smith-Lever Act to deliver university knowledge and agricultural research findings directly to the people. Ever since, AgriLife Extension programs have addressed the emerging issues of the day, serving diverse populations across the state. Texans turn to Extension for solutions in horticulture, agriculture, 4-H and youth, and family and consumer sciences. Extension agents respond not only with answers, but also with resources and services that result in significant returns on investment to boost the economy. Join us Fridays at 1 o'clock for the AgriLife Extension Hour.
A Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Welcome back to the Legal Connection with Toni and Cheryl. Toni and I are talking about immigration law. We had a guest for the last 2 shows, Shiva Gill. She's an immigration attorney. And so we just kind of wanted to talk about it from a personal perspective and some of our clients and people that we know and stuff like that. So we've continued the discussion, and hopefully we'll get Shiva back to kind of tie up the loose ends. But I sort of said this before the break, but I want to hit on it again. Like the the person I was talking about from El Salvador. They came, they're temporary protected status. They have 3 kids. One's a lawyer, one's a doctor, and one is a PhD. All right. So I think these immigrants, legal immigrants,
I have to stop it if you know that much about it. Do you know if they got student loans, or how do they pay for the school?
student loans.
I mean, that's troubling, because if they're deported, they're not paying their student loans.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
means they came and they did use the country. Not they came here, they used the country to get their education, which they can use elsewhere,
Sure.
and they haven't gone through the right channels yet to become a citizen. Although I know that there's some roadblocks, but they got loans from our country and they weren't citizens.
Yeah.
To better themselves, and so that would be all the more reason for us to want them to stay here to pay off their loans.
And they want to stay. Tony, this situation is a mess. And this is why people are kind of yelling over each other's heads all the time. Is because it's valid on both points. But, anyway.
It's not valid for the person that waited in line to get here properly, though.
Right.
And they're stepping over somebody else that's done the right thing. And I will
Wait, you just said it's not valid for the person who waited in line to get her properly.
Right.
They should be given first priority.
Yes, they
right.
should be pushed. It's like cutting in line.
Exactly.
You shouldn't get to cut in line and then push over somebody.
And then say, deal with it, country. Get over it. It's too hard.
Yeah, they have an entitlement issue. I've come over here. I've worked really hard. I went to school. I should be a citizen. Well, no, you got here and you overstayed your welcome, and then you got a student loan, and you need to be a little bit more, like God said, patient and humble. Those are the 2 things that they told us in church last week. Is you need to show patience, because God showed patience, and you need to have humility. Those 2 things go a long way for everybody. And when I see this senator from New York screaming about how everybody should be free, and come in here and get free things, and whether you work or not, and all this stuff, and it's just ridiculous. That's
it's
not patient,
crazy.
and that's not humble, and that's not hardworking. Those are 3 things that you need to
Well,
do.
yeah, and it totally negates that we're American citizens. We need to take care of ourselves.
Right.
You know?
We can't take care of ourselves if you're taking our spot, too.
But having said that, and back to the immigration thing, immigrants understand very clearly the opportunities that they have. And so frequently we see them as physicians. It's physicians, scientists, things like that. They're also intelligent
Yes.
people,
Yeah, they're not dumb. They got over here.
Yeah,
and wily.
engineers, and they had a little bit of money or they wouldn't be here. Yeah, so they take advantage of the education opportunities that we have in this country more than American
Right, they
kids
do.
do. I see it over and over again. And
You
I
have to
just
respect
think,
them for that.
well, and I do, but they learned it the hard way, by not having those opportunities, or those opportunities as readily
want it more.
available,
They want
as
it
readily available in their country of origin, means it wasn't available to them, because if it was, they wouldn't come over here to get
And
it.
that's how you were saying that your husband's
husband
family, from the
came over
time they
here.
were 2.
Well, from the time, no, before he was born, they wanted Sam to be a doctor. And so, they sent him over here. They were going to send him to England first. It's an interesting story. They fly to England. The school was so dreary and depressing that his dad looked at him and said, let's go. I'm not leaving you here. And then about 6 months later, they sent him to America. And he stayed with some family friends and an uncle of an uncle that was already here, and started going to school.
It seems like he would have had chain migration then if he already had an uncle that was here. So he had the opportunity.
I'm not sure how they applied. They may have actually applied.
You were
through
telling me
that
earlier
uncle.
also family members will also hold that up against other family members. I'm not going to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get
because
kind of
they're being
stingy that
jerks.
way too. I'm already a citizen. You're not too bad.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like these people that I know on temporary protected status. They live in constant fear. Their son has become a citizen because he applied through his wife, but now he's not doing anything.
And
to
that
help
went
them.
to our other conversation where these people are all trying to wine and dine the citizens. So beware people that have kids that are between the ages of, say, 15 and marriage age,
30.
15 and 30, because these people are coming over and they're
Immigrants.
They are immigrants, and they're cute. They look like Ronaldo. They look like soccer players, and they're whining and dining and
American
and
citizens.
They're trying to, for false reasons, and maybe it turns into love, but they're trying to become citizens, and so they're seducing your children, whether it be a
Absolutely.
male or a female.
Yeah.
And we see that these annulments and these divorces happen all the time. That these people are crushed when they find out they've been used. And they have been used. And once they're here, and they've been married for 2 years, just like Shiva said, they're on their path to citizenship, and they've used your kid. And I can't say this enough. If you're listening, or if you have kids that are listening, if you can just try to see through it, there may be really love there, but many of them are so desperate to be citizens, they are using your children for that reason.
They'll put on a face.
Don't
of
fall
love.
for that.
Right. Yeah, or be wary, be wary.
Be wary of that whining and dining, because why are they suddenly coming after you in full force? It may
Yeah.
not be love. It may be
Yeah.
love of wanting to be a person in the country, because the number one way to become a citizen is marrying a citizen.
Oh,
We know
absolutely.
that.
Easiest way. Okay, so we're going to answer some questions now.
Mhm.
Tony, do I need a lawyer to apply for U.S. citizenship?
You don't. You can actually go to the website that we gave you, and you can go through the proper process. And as you were saying, many countries, particularly now with the internet, speak English. They can fill these forms out on their own and do it the proper way.
Okay. All right. Great. And so now you want to talk about what do you do if you're here already and you're here
You're already
illegally?
here. Option one, entering into a valid bona fide marriage with a U.S. citizen makes you an immediate relative under the U.S. immigration system. And immediate relative theoretically is eligible for a U.S. green card, which is your first stop to becoming a citizen. The first thing you have to do through an application process. Okay, so that was what we were just talking about. If you are in the United States illegally because you stayed past your expiration date valid with a valid visa, rather than entering legally, consider yourself lucky, because your legal entry qualifies you for an exception, and marriage is the first way. The second thing is if you can be in the military. If you're not here legally and you're in the military, that's the second best way of your path to becoming a citizen.
That's
Um,
great. I
and
didn't know that.
A lot of the older wars, like you're talking World War I, World War II, are a little bit weird because they're so old and we can't even imagine it. But we're talking Desert Storm. Even now in the military, that's one way to do it. A cancellation of removal. If there's a reason for you to stay, like my friend that I was talking about, I found my clients become my friends. You have to go through the process, and you can convince this judge to cancel your removal if you're in ICE. There's a number of ways you can do it. We'll talk about that in our next show. Then try that. Asylum is the fourth way. If your country is persecuting you, but it has to be the government, it can't be for economic reasons. And then the fifth way is temporary protected status. It is a way. This is not a green card, nor does it lead to a green card. However, temporary protected status will allow you to stay in the United States legally for a set amount of time.
Okay, so we're done for today talking about immigration law. Send us your questions, questions at legalconnectionshow.com. Listen to us every Tuesday live from 12 to 1 on 104.5 or 106.1, or go to irlonestar.com. Thanks, guys.
And remember, serve God by serving others.
See you next week.